A year into my marriage, life seemed steady until a sudden storm disrupted my calm. My husband unexpectedly announced that I would need to take care of my father-in-law, who had suffered a serious accident and was now incapacitated. This was my first experience with such a situation, and I found myself overwhelmed. To my astonishment, my husband and mother-in-law decided to take a vacation in Hawaii, leaving me behind to tend to his father. They had no idea that this decision would lead to unforeseen tragedy. My name is Marigold, and I'm 32 years old. I've always had a passion for cooking, which led me to work for a major restaurant chain after graduating college. For the past 8 years, I've been in the planning department, where I developed new menu items. It was during this time that I met Merrick, the man who would become my husband. 2 years ago, after a long day, I visited my favorite Japanese pub, a place I frequented for some relaxation. That evening, I took a seat at the counter, and Merrick happened to be sitting next to me. Thanks to the friendly pub owner, we struck up a conversation and quickly discovered we were the same age. We clicked instantly, exchanged contact information, and before long, Merrick began inviting me out for dinner. As we spent more time together, I was drawn to his cheerful, easygoing nature, and it wasn't long before we started dating. After a year, we fell in love and tied the knot just 6 months ago. Now, we live in a cozy apartment conveniently located between our workplaces. With both of us working, I sometimes let house chores slide, but Merrick always reassures me with a smile, saying, "You don't have to be perfect at everything. I'm just happy being with you." His sweet and understanding nature makes me feel fortunate to be his wife. Our life together is filled with love and laughter, and even 6 months into our marriage, we still share heartwarming moments. I truly believed our happiness would last for years to come. Then one day, everything changed. I came home from work expecting the usual cheerful greeting from Merrick, but was instead met with an unsettling silence. Merrick sat in the living room, his gaze fixed on his phone, worry etched across his face. My heart sank as I approached him, sensing something was wrong. "Merrick, are you okay?" I asked, anxiety creeping into my voice. He barely looked up, his voice heavy with dread. "It's my mom," she called. "Your dad had an accident." The news hit me like a punch to the gut. I could hardly process what he was saying, but I knew we needed to act quickly. I grabbed Merrick's hand, urging him, "We need to go see him right now." But he shook his head. "We can't go yet." "Why not? Is he not doing well?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "He's not, but Mom's with him. She'll stay by his side until he gets better." His quiet response only deepened my anxiety. I released his hand and sank into the couch, feeling utterly helpless. My father-in-law had just turned 67 and despite his age, had always been in great health, spending his weekends hiking and golfing. The thought of him lying in a hospital bed felt surreal. I could see that Merrick was struggling too. Not only was his father seriously injured, but he was also the president of the company Merrick worked for. The weight of it all clearly overwhelmed him. A week later, we finally visited my father-in-law in the hospital. He lay in bed, a weak smile barely visible on his face as we entered the room. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to mask my concern. He scratched his head and offered me an apologetic look. "Marigold, I'm sorry for worrying you." "Don't be sorry. I'm just relieved that you're safe," I reassured him. He nodded slowly. "I'm all right, just need some time to recover." His faint smile brought me a measure of relief, but the reality was grim. The accident had left him with a spinal cord injury, and though he could speak, he was paralyzed. The doctors informed us it would take at least 2 months of rehabilitation to assess his condition, and even after being released from the hospital, he would require ongoing care. During this time, Merrick stepped into his father's role as president of the company, at least temporarily. Watching my husband take on such a significant position was strange, yet he handled it well. Still, the stress weighed heavily on him. As we sat in the hospital room, my mother-in-law suddenly pulled me aside, tone sharp and condescending. "Marigold," she began, "don't get any ideas just because Merrick's the president now. That doesn't mean you can start enjoying yourself at his expense." Her accusation stung. "I have my own job and I'm doing just fine," I replied firmly. She gave me a smug look. "Sure, but you knew who Merrick was before you married him, didn't you? You're quite the opportunist." Her insinuation was clear, and this wasn't the first time she had made such remarks. She seemed to believe I had married Merrick for his family's wealth and status, but the truth was, I had no idea about his background when we first met. Still, my mother-in-law's hostility had lingered from the beginning, and I had tried to ignore it. But this time, I couldn't hold back. I couldn't hold back any longer. I didn't marry him for his money, I snapped. Merrick's vibrant personality had always drawn me in, but now I felt a wave of betrayal wash over me. His mother's sharp words hit me hard. What are you talking about? You speak to me as if you really know who I am. I shot back, but her gaze remained icy. Exactly, and no matter what you say or do, I will never approve of you, she replied with a smirk. My father-in-law, sensing the rising tension, asked, Is everything all right? It's nothing, she said quickly, glaring at me before turning away. It was painfully clear that my mother-in-law adored Merrick. She probably thought I was just some woman who had married her son for his money, especially since we had tied the knot after dating for only a year. From the very first moment I met her at our wedding, she had been ruthless toward me. I never imagined her sarcasm and hostility would continue, but what troubled me even more was Merrick's apparent worship of her. A few days later, he dropped another bombshell. Marigold, you know Dad will be released from the hospital in about 2 months, right? Yeah, why? I asked, sensing something was coming. Well, when that happens, we're moving in with my parents, he said nonchalantly. What? Where did this come from? I gasped, taken aback. Mom suggested it. She said it would be the perfect time for us to move in together. She can't take care of Dad by herself, he explained, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. But we can't just do this so suddenly, I protested. What are you talking about? We're all in this together. Mom's really grateful, he said, brushing off my concerns. I felt utterly confused. It was clear that Merrick and his mother had already made their decision, and my opinion didn't seem to matter. Every time I tried to bring up the subject afterward, Merrick ignored me, and his devotion to his mother only seemed to strengthen. Meanwhile, his attitude toward me grew increasingly critical. How's the packing going? He demanded one day. I won't be able to take time off for the move, so you'll have to handle it all. You're also in charge of the housework and taking care of Dad. Don't let Mom down. His words left me feeling mentally drained, and the looming move only added to my stress. At work, the company was entering its busiest season, and I was struggling to keep up with both my job and the overwhelming task of moving. I was physically and mentally exhausted. 2 months later, we finally moved in, and my father-in-law was discharged from the hospital. There was no time for me to catch my breath. I immediately stepped into the role of caregiver. My day began at 3 a.m. as I prepared breakfast, did laundry, and then went to help my father-in-law with his morning massage and get him dressed. After breakfast, I would feed him before rushing off to work, always feeling pressed for time. Despite my best efforts, my mother-in-law was never satisfied. Every morning, just as I was about to leave for work, she would stop me. Marigold, can I have a word? She'd say. I'm sorry, I'm running late, I would reply, trying to make my escape. What's your rush? Sit down. I need to talk to you about breakfast. It wasn't good enough today, she insisted, her voice dripping with disapproval. I'll fix it when I get back, I said desperately, eager to leave. But she would raise her voice and demand, No, sit down now. These confrontations set my heart racing and my head pounding. I started experiencing panic attacks and my stress levels skyrocketed. Each day felt like I was walking on eggshells, desperately trying to avoid triggering her complaints. I was barely making it to work on time, and my coworkers began to notice. They could tell something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to share the truth. 3 months had passed since my father-in-law's return from the hospital, and I felt overwhelmed by my responsibilities. When I got home from work, I had to dive straight into dinner preparations. No matter how quickly I rushed through it, Merrick always found something wrong with every meal. What is this, Marigold? I come home exhausted and you expect me to eat fish? Really? He'd say, glaring at the plate in front of him. I'm sorry, I would mutter. I had to leave the kitchen to help your father, so I made something quick. You should be making something that boosts my energy. I didn't want boiled fish, he'd reply, then grab a cup of instant noodles, pouring hot water into it. My mother-in-law watched silently, a smirk playing on her lips as she savored my defeat. Feeling completely crushed, I went to help my father-in-law prepare for bed. He noticed my pale face and asked gently, Marigold, are you okay? You don't look well. I'm fine, I lied, forcing a smile. I've just been a little stressed with work, that's all. Is that really it? I've heard a lot of yelling lately from my wife. Is everything all right? It's nothing. I'm just not very good at a lot of things, I said, trying to reassure him. I didn't want to burden him with my problems, so I kept smiling. But deep down, my heart was heavy with despair, and the truth was, I wanted to escape. I longed to escape this nightmare, but I couldn't bring myself to abandon my father-in-law. What would happen to him if I left? I couldn't just walk away from everything. The thought haunted me, but there was no clear answer. As the end of the year approached, I finally had some time off work, but even on my days off, there was no respite. On New Year's Eve, Merrick made an outrageous announcement that felt like a twist of the knife. Mom and I are heading to Hawaii, he said casually while packing his bags. Hawaii? Now, I asked, shocked. Yeah, we've been planning this for a while, he replied as if it were no big deal. Wait a second, think about your father. How could you possibly leave him like this? I protested, but my concerns fell on deaf ears. Merrick just smiled smugly. He's fine with you being here. You're off work, so you might as well do something productive. Both he and my mother-in-law wore triumphant expressions, proud of their plans as they showcased their large carry-on bags. They seemed to find my confusion amusing, struggling not to laugh. Just before stepping out the door, Merrick added, "You'll take care of Dad while we're off to Hawaii. We'll be relaxing, so you handle everything here." With a chuckle, they both left and shut the door behind them. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Why was I left to manage everything alone? Enough is enough. I'm not going to put up with this any longer. I resolved that once they returned from Hawaii, I would file for divorce. I was done being treated like a servant. Until they came back, I decided to dedicate myself entirely to caring for my father-in-law. I stopped doing any extra housework and made a clear plan. I would let everything slide and focus solely on his care. The next morning, I prepared breakfast for him as usual. When I walked into his room with a towel to help him clean up and change, he greeted me with a smile. "Marigold, best wishes for the new year." "Happy New Year to you too, Dad," I replied, though my cheerfulness felt forced. I was still reeling from the events of the previous night. "Where did Merrick and Mom go? They seem to be in a hurry," he asked, looking puzzled. "They went to Hawaii," I said, trying to keep my tone light. I watched his expression shift as he let out a deep sigh. "Hawaii? Really?" He looked skeptical, shaking his head. "What's going on?" Suddenly, his mood changed and he gave me a curious smile. "Marigold, I've been waiting for the right moment to talk to you. I owe you an apology," he began, his voice calm yet serious. "Wait, what do you mean?" I asked, confused about where this was headed. He continued, "I've been able to get out of bed on my own for a few days now, but I kept it to myself. I wanted to see how things played out." Confused, I urged him to explain further. Slowly, he revealed everything. He had noticed how I was being mistreated, how Merrick and my mother-in-law had ignored his needs while piling all the responsibility onto me. "I asked them to help with small errands, but they refused," he explained. "They didn't care at all." It wasn't just that. My father-in-law also shared that he had received complaints from the company's executive director. Apparently, Merrick had been slacking off as acting president, and this trip to Hawaii was the final straw. My father-in-law suspected that Merrick had used company funds to pay for it, so he had asked a representative to monitor Merrick's actions. Sure enough, Merrick's mismanagement and laziness were exposed, injuring everyone at the company. "As soon as I get back, I'll be returning as president," my father-in-law told me. "And as for Merrick, I'm going to fire him. He's not fit for this role." Then he revealed another surprise. While Merrick and my mother-in-law were away, we were going to change the locks on the house. "They won't be coming back here," he said firmly. I was stunned but felt a wave of relief wash over me. Things were finally falling into place. A week passed, and then one afternoon, the doorbell rang. The front door rattled as Merrick and my mother-in-law, fresh from Hawaii, tried to get inside. The intercom buzzed incessantly. I picked it up and calmly greeted them. "How was your trip?" I asked, feigning cheerfulness. "What?" "Marigold, open the door," Merrick demanded, sounding frantic. "We can't get in." "I can't do that," I replied coolly. "Your father told me not to." "What are you talking about? Just open the door already," he pleaded. "Oh, and by the way," I continued, "I heard your trip was paid for with company funds. Care to explain that?" His voice faltered. "How? How did you know about that?" I watched their shocked faces on the monitor, struggling to hold back my laughter. Just then, my father-in-law joined the conversation, his voice firm and authoritative. So, you really did embezzle money from the company, didn't you? Merrick was taken aback. Dad, you? How are you standing? I've been able to stand for days now, thanks to Marigold helping me with my rehab, he replied. And I know all your behavior at work, thanks to the managing director. You've been lazy and irresponsible. Dad, no, that's not true. Merrick stammered, panic rising in his voice. Enough. My father-in-law cut him off. You're fired. You're no longer welcome at the company. Pack up your things and leave the office immediately. Merrick was now in tears, pleading through the monitor. Marigold, please, you won't leave me, will you? I couldn't hold back any longer. What are you talking about? Do you have any idea what you've put me through? You and your mother have taken advantage of me from the start, forcing me to care for your father while treating me like a servant. Do you even realize how much I've suffered? Calm down, Marigold. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, he cried. Your apology means nothing, I replied coldly. When you left for Hawaii, I realized there was no point in continuing this marriage. I don't want anything more to do with you. I'm done. Merrick stood there, dazed, as my mother-in-law rushed to support him. It was a pitiful sight, mother and son united in defeat. My father-in-law, holding the divorce papers I had picked up earlier, stepped forward and handed them to Merrick. Sign these now, he ordered. Merrick and my mother-in-law signed the papers without protest, knowing they had no other choice. I kicked them out of the house and locked the door behind them, ignoring their pleas as they pounded on the door and begged to be let back in. Since that day, I haven't seen either of them. Rumor has it they're both unemployed and living in a comic book cafe, picking up odd jobs just to get by. It's a far cry from the comfortable life they used to lead, but I believe it's the punishment they deserve. After the divorce, my father-in-law graciously told me, I'll hire a housekeeper from now on. You're free to live your own life. I took his advice and moved into a place closer to my job. Now, I'm living a peaceful, fulfilling life, and I'll always be grateful to my father-in-law for helping me escape that nightmare. I'm determined to repay his kindness in any way I can.